online, on digital radio and TV, and on 94.9 FM.
London's radio station.
BBC Radio London.
BBC Radio London at the weekend.
Dotun Adebayo on Sunday.
Call 020 722 42000.
Dotun Adebayo, Sundays from 8.
BBC Radio London.
Good evening, London. 007 224 2000 is my number. Welcome to Dotun on Sunday. Between now and 10 o'clock, we're going to debate issues that Londoners will be talking about in the morning. Many thanks to Sonny and Shay for the last couple of hours here on BBC Radio London. So 007 224 2000, as many of you will know, the Prime Minister has committed now to regenerate and improve the 100 worst sink estates, as they're described in the country. The 100 worst sink estates. So, lots of questions around that. What is a sink estate? But more importantly, what does the regeneration, if you like, or the government intervention do to the communities that live in those sink estates? If you've lived on an estate, whether it's been described as a sink estate or not, I'd love to hear from you on the programme as well. If you've got any experience of how things changed when your neighbourhood was changed, transformed, redeveloped, regenerated or otherwise, then do give me a call. 0207 224 2000 is my number. What should the Prime Minister consider before he does develop or regenerate sink estates, as the case may be? What should he be thinking about? What kind of consultation should he have been doing with the likes of you, people who live in those estates? Give me a call, 0207 224 2000. I want to talk to you about that and all the other issues that concern the residents of the capital currently. Housing, of course, is the big issue in the capital, isn't it? It's going to be the number one issue when it comes to the mayoral election and all of that. So, sink estates, housing, it's all about Britain, but it is really about London, isn't it? And more specifically, let's face it, who is it that lives on sink estates? Are we talking about where black folk and poor white folk live, essentially? That is what we're talking about, isn't it? That's what a sink estate is. It's not where middle class people live, is it? 0207 224 2000. That one made me laugh. Hope it made you laugh as well. Give me a call. I want to talk to you about all these issues over the next couple of hours.
Dotun Adebayo, Sundays from 8.
Call 020 722 42000.
BBC Radio London.
BBC Radio London.
So, first of all, though, you know, we usually go to our girl about town, Dotun Adebayo, to give us a rundown of what's happening in the capital. We usually go to her straight away towards the end of a programme, actually. This evening, though, we're going to go to her straight away because our girl about town is where, Joanna?
I'm in Milan at the moment. I've just spent the weekend looking at some fashion shows for the men's collections.
Milan? Is that North London or South London?
South London. Near Streatham.
Yeah, whatever. So you're in Milan tonight, having more fun than the rest of us. Yeah, tell us more. Do tell us what we should enjoy in the capital this week that compares to Milan.
Well, actually, today there's two big things happening. First of all, I mentioned last week, didn't I, that there's Lumiere London, which is a festival of light, and it's been right across the capital, some really beautiful light displays. And tonight in Oxford Circus is the last one, and you can see it right by Oxford Circus in Regent Street. I think it's actually supposed to be a 3D image of an elephant behind. But all the same, it's very pretty, despite its description, and it's the last day. It's had the whole street in a roadblock, especially Thursday and Friday.
I know. It's not just the whole street. The whole of the capital has been in a roadblock because of this Lumiere business. I forgot that it was you that told everybody about it and caused the police no end of trouble, but nevertheless. So we'll chalk that one up as you doing your job a little bit too well. Okay, so Lumiere, and the last night is tonight, is it, you say?
The last night to see that is tonight, absolutely. But also this weekend is the actor and comedian Kevin Hart has kicked off his What Now tour, which is going to be amazing. It's sold out, actually, in quite a few of the venues in London because it's at the O2.
Then what's the point of telling us about it if it's sold out?
No. Sorry, on a few of the dates. So you've still got time to go along and see him this Saturday, 23rd and 24th, so Saturday coming. So you need to get your tickets very fast, though, which is what I'm telling you today, because there's only about 10 or 11 tickets at the Wembley Arena and just less than 20 at the O2.
Cheers, thank you. Now you've told everybody. I can't apply for my tickets till after the Oh, thanks. Only 10, 20 left. How much is it anyway?
They're not bad. They're starting from £39 and they go up to £139.
Well, that's going to have to be...
Bad.
I'm going to have to talk to my wife about that one. Let me try and see if I can call her whilst you're talking. Yeah. And what else?
Well, okay, so if that's slightly pricier, there's a really brilliant event that's going to be taking place in Peckham, the new cultural little hub of South East London, and it's in the Bussey building and the CLS Art Cafe. Now, basically, this is kicking off on Wednesday the 20th until the 22nd of February, and it's called the Soul Funk Train. So it's basically an event that's taking place from Wednesday right the way through to the weekend, and it's all Motown, soul and funk music. If you go in the weekdays, it's only £5 to go in. If you go on Saturdays, it starts from about £12.
You might want to explain for the youngers what Motown is. Those under 40, will they know what Motown is?
Yes, they will.
Okay,
they should do.
I'm just asking.
They should at least know the sound.
Okay.
They should at least know the sound.
Phew, okay.
And also, I have to mention, because I did mention a few weeks ago that we had, I'd been along to a restaurant called Dans Le Noir, which is my terrible French, but it's basically dining in complete darkness. And I went this Friday, and I recommend everybody who's listening should go along and experience it at least once. It's essentially a restaurant which is ran by blind people. So you're served by blind people, and you eat in absolute complete darkness. You don't know where your cutlery is, you can't see your food, and you just have to really rely on your other senses to get through.
Yeah, I remember when you told us about this, and it's a German thing. I think it's quite popular in Germany to eat in the dark as such. Does the food taste better when you eat it in the dark?
It does taste a lot better. You can literally taste everything, and you feel very conscious of its texture. And you do find yourself, before you put the fork to your mouth, you find yourself using your hand to kind of touch it and kind of guess what it is, because you cannot see a thing. So you have no idea what you're about to eat. Scary. It is scary, but definitely worth trying at least once.
Appreciate it. I know you've got a plane to catch. Thanks very much. Okay. All the best. A girl about Dotun Adebayo. He's taking us to Milan tonight, so he's given us a few tips of what to do in the capital over the next few days. Let's talk about what the Prime Minister should do in the capital over the next few days with regards to Sink Estates. You might remember earlier on in this week, he made a big announcement. He's talking about regenerating and demolishing or improving in some way or other Britain's worst 100 Sink Estates. If you don't already know, by the way, a Sink Estate is a British council estate with high levels of economic and social deprivation. I think that's how they describe it. You might want to describe it a different way. Feel free, 0207 224 2000. There tends, I understand, to be a strong link between crime rates and sink estates in large urban areas. I don't know what that link is. Maybe we'll find out tonight. What I'm asking you is this, though. Is regeneration of council estates effectively pulling them down and starting again, because you hold your hands up if you're a government and say we made mistakes in the 60s or 70s, let's put it all down and start from scratch? Is that necessarily a good thing? Because despite all the other problems that these estates might have, they are a community, aren't they? They are people's homes we're talking about. Yeah, give us a call. Tell us if you have ever experienced any kind of regeneration or living on estates and so on. 0207 224 2000. What's wrong with estates? Why are they a problem? Why are they sinking when the rest of us are on solid ground? I don't know. 0207 224 2000. Do you agree with the Prime Minister or not that these estates need to be pulled down and start again for the benefit of us all in a kind of a utilitarian way, if you like? Give me your thoughts. 0207 224 2000. In the studio with me this week, we've got Kemi Badenoch, who's a Conservative member of the London Assembly. Good to see you, Kemi. Welcome to the programme and all that.
Thank you.
Author and relationship coach Lyndon Walters is here. You do a lot of work, I know, Lyndon, as well, on the Broadwater Farm Estate in Tottenham. Good evening.
Greetings, and also Northumberland Park.
Okay. I was thinking more Broadwater Farm.
It started there.
Yeah, and that's where I grew up. So let's big up Broadwater. Never mind that Northumberland business. Taking a W3 all the way down there for what? Dr. Noah Nasser is here with us as well. She's the author of Bridging Cultures, which deals with this very subject. Dr. Nasser, welcome to the programme.
Thank you very much.
Great to have you with us. We've got Jeff Bell with us as well as the chair of the Woodbury Down Community Organisation. Now we're talking my manor. I know that estate very well, Jeff. Welcome to the programme.
Thank you very much.
And Jerry Flynn is here as well, member of local community group Elephant Amenity Network and ex-resident of the Haygate estate as well. Jerry, good evening.
Hello.
Appreciate you all coming this evening. It's a fascinating subject, isn't it? An important one as well. Dr. Nasser, if I can begin with you, how do you describe what the government terms as a sink estate? What is it to you?
The government's definition is a sink estate is one where there's a perception that estate is has multiple deprivation indices, whether those are social, health, environmental, economic, and so they are challenged and struggling to fit in within the larger local economy.
Is it clear in your mind why they have these social problems? What's the relationship, if you like?
I really think it's down to social inequality.
So it's not about the estates?
I don't think it's about the estates themselves. I think it's just about a community that happens to be struggling and quite marginalised, and there's a lot of social inequality and marginalisation.
Kemi Badenoch, I didn't introduce you properly. I should have said as well that you were former prospective parliamentary candidate for Dulwich, was it? Hernhill and Dulwich, I seem to remember as well.
Dulwich and West Norwood, yes.
Dulwich and West Norwood.
It's actually mostly Brixton.
Okay, let's call it Brixton then. That's a nice way of a nice shortcut there. But I know that you did a lot of work on estates and otherwise. When you hear Dr. Nasser there saying that it's not about the bricks and mortar, which is what the Prime Minister is trying to deal with, it's about the constituency of the people that live there because of poverty and other issues. That's where the problems lie. Is the Prime Minister then barking up the wrong tree?
No, I think the Prime Minister is right, and I disagree with Dr. Nasser, I'm afraid.
With all due respect, I'm sure.
Even just within half a mile of where I lived in Brixton, there were two completely different types of estates. Almost the same sort of
middle class and working class, essentially.
No, they're both working class. But one of them, I mean, you may have read Evening Standard about Angeltown, Somerleyton. You only have to look at those estates to know that that is not how people should live.
So what is it about the estates that
they were
struck you?
Completely cut off from the rest of the community. Whereas this other estate, which I'm talking about, didn't even have a name. You could walk into it from a normal street, and it wasn't, it was the same sort of levels of ethnic minorities, poor families and so on. And what you would find is that the nicer ones, the ones that had been built more nicely, there was more there was more right to buy. People felt that, yes, this is somewhere that I'd want to own. On the other estates, the ones which are called the sink estates, high rises, lots of, things cut off, no access to anywhere. And, I mean, I saw things with my own eyes. I can't even give the details here. Just walking around, driving around, say, Somerleyton, that was absolutely terrible. You can tell us more about your experiences in a moment, but as I said, you're a Conservative member of the London Assembly. Yes.
Let's speak to a Labour member of the London Assembly. Jeanette Arnold, who's the Labour member of the London Assembly for North East London, joins us as well. Kemi is right, isn't she, Jeanette? That it's the way that these tower blocks and housing estates were built invariably by the Wilson government or otherwise. That's what the problem is. They got the architecture all wrong. Do you not agree?
No, it's just not as simple as that, is it? I mean, design is one aspect of it. I would give you that. But if you look, you'll see that when local government went through many, many years of not getting enough money to refurbish, to regenerate these very estates we're talking about, then they were left to decay. And then what happened was those families who were able moved out, and that left vacant property, the so-called, a property that couldn't, that the tenants weren't going to accept. So what happened is they and it's a nasty phrase, but people were dumped into, people who were least able with minimal capacity were then dumped into these areas. So, that's what happens. It's this accumulative effect. Now, can I just say quickly, Dotun, that no one can sort of sniff at £140 million. But what I would ask us is this sufficient? And
I'm not going to get into any of those. I'm not going to get into
that it's insufficient.
I'm not going to get into any of those partisan political things because we'll never know.
They'll be replaced for like.
Fair enough. I'm not going to get into the partisan politics of all of this. No, but 140 million.
Understand the basis of.
I understand, Jeanette, but we don't have an accountant. I've invited everybody but an accountant. So I don't know whether 140 million is a lot of money.
Oh, I'm telling you, it's not.
Yeah, no, yours.
I can tell you the thing. What people are trying to do is make it seem as if they've given 140 million to regenerate. No, that is just to kickstart. So things like planning applications, legal things, it will have to be, of course.
Where's that money coming from? I said I wouldn't get into the partisan politics of it, so let's leave that to one side.
Fine.
Let me bring some other people into the conversation, though. Jeff Bell, chair of Woodbury Down Community Organisation. And Woodbury Down is an estate that has transformed remarkably over the last 20 years. Arguably, it's not a working class estate anymore. It's very middle class. How did you lot manage that?
Well, sorry, it is not middle class.
Isn't it?
I don't know where you got this.
Woodbury Down Estate. It's right across.
No,
it's right across
Woodbury
the road
Down
from
Estate. Let me just explain Woodbury Down Estate.
Please.
Woodbury Down Estate, the regeneration of this estate has started 5 or 6 years ago, right? It is predominantly working class. There's a high level of poverty in there, and gradually over 20 years it's going to be replaced. However, all the people who live on the estate, thanks to those of us who live here who fought for this, are going to stay there, right? You're going to get new homes.
That's what the council says, isn't it?
That's what the council, because that is what been agreed by the council.
Because they said that in Holly Street down the road in Hackney. You know that.
Yes,
you know what happened there?
No. It's all gone through. It's been agreed by them. It's been agreed by the Housing Association. It's been agreed by. It's been signed off by the mayor and so on and so on. So we're all getting new flats, but it's going to take 20 years, right? So it is certainly not. Now, there are people coming, there have people come in the last 4 or 5 years, which we actually think is a very good idea because we support the idea of a mixed neighbourhood, right? So we think that's a very sort of good thing. And
that's what makes the difference, isn't it? That's what's made the difference, isn't it?
Because
all those £1 million flats across the road, on the other side of Seven Sisters Road.
There is no
£1 million flats in a working class area.
Yeah.
That's transformed things somewhat, hasn't it?
Sorry, it has not been transformed. The thing is only just starting, right?
Yeah.
The latest census figures, right, still show that Woodbury Down is one of the most deprived areas in Hackney and one of the most deprived areas in London, right? Now, it has been said, and actually the reason I'm here is because in the statement released by the Prime Minister, he cited Woodbury Down, right? And he says it was a struggling estate, it was a sink estate, and so on and so on. Now, none of this really is true, right? I mean, for one thing, Woodbury Down was built at the end of the Second World War. It was at that time one of the most up-and-coming estates in London, right? And it built not just a neighbourhood, there were the nice flats, there was a schools built, there was a library built, there was the first comprehensive school actually, and the first health centre under the NHS. So it was a forward-looking, progressive place. At the time. Now, what happened, of course, is that those sort of houses themselves, over a period, fell into some disrepair, right? And it came about 15 years ago, about 10 years ago, the council, because the council couldn't borrow money to do the houses up, right? Because they weren't allowed to, right? So they decided to go for regeneration.
Things fell apart.
Right. So
essentially.
Well, no, things weren't falling apart. This is the point.
So much yourself,
this is the point. Things weren't falling apart. Things were getting bad, right? So the regeneration, which I supported and still do, right? So I'm not saying that, but the point I'm sort of trying to make First of all, is that the council weren't allowed to refurbish, right? Now, the second point I would sort of like to make is that this idea, for instance, again, the Prime Minister has said tower blocks and so on and so on. There are very, very few tower blocks on.
There aren't any on Woodbury Down.
There are three in
are
the.
There? Oh yeah, of course.
On the edges. I mean, that's if you call 12 to 14
Do you mean the ones
stories.
down on Green Lanes?
Yeah.
Ah,
that's right.
well, that's
so,
yeah.
So I mean, those are sort of 12 to 14 stories.
Sure.
What has been built, right, are two new tower blocks, right, 30 stories high, in which are entirely private because council people...
£1 million flats, like I say.
That's right. So this is the point. So council people don't actually want us to live there. So we actually fought to make sure they didn't sort of live there.
I'll tell you, you're going to have enough time to tell us all of the story, Jeff.
Right.
Just bear with me 1 second. If I interrupt you, I apologise. Okay?
Right.
I want to bring Jerry in as well here, member of the local community group Elephant Amenity Network. What is that group? What does Elephant Amenity Network actually do?
Well, the Elephant Amenity Network was a group of local people around the elephant who got together around about 2007, 2008 because they were very unhappy with the way the regeneration of the Haygate estate in particular was going at the Elephant and Castle. We are local people, local residents, local traders, and we've been campaigning ever since for a better deal, really, for local people. Not very successfully, I should say.
Right, and the community is fragmented somewhat, though, hasn't it? The Haygate estate has gone.
Haygate's gone.
Yeah, it's completely gone. And isn't there, how can I say this politely, isn't there a new influx of people that mainly work in the city and stuff who are able to afford those flats there as well? Isn't that part of the problem, though?
You don't need to be polite about it. That is part of the problem, yeah. The new people on the estate certainly aren't any of the old people who left the estate.
Yeah, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, that depends. For the people who left the estate, it's a very bad thing. Maybe some of the people moving on the estate, I hope they will enjoy contented lives.
I think they will. It's a really nice appointed part of London, isn't it?
Yeah, if you've got 350,000 to afford a place on the new Haygate, which is now called Elephant Park, by the way, you could be quite happy there. But the fact is that the people who lived on the Haygates were promised new homes on the new Haygate, and in the event, out of 1,200 households there, only 45 got a new place. So we formed to try and get a better deal for people in those sort of circumstances.
And to what extent have you been successful in doing that? To what extent?
Well, not very successful at all, I have to say. We're struggling on.
There's
a lot of money involved in this.
Yeah, of course there is, and that's the problem, isn't it, with housing in London at the moment? You know, it's not a joke business anymore. That councils can't just. At one point, you could argue that councils didn't take housing estates as seriously as they do now. Every single room on that estate needs to be occupied now. Otherwise, somebody needs some explaining to do.
Yeah, well, that does raise quite a lot of questions, which maybe we'll come to, just exactly who is occupying those estates, who the landlords are. And
we will definitely come to that. We'll definitely come to that. Very quickly, if I might ask you to say a few words as well, Lyndon Walters, your experience generally, I mean, in a minute or 2 minutes, just tell me very quickly, how have those estates that you have worked in transformed over the last... I know Broadwater Farm, a special situation because of the Tottenham riots of 1985 in particular, completely different place. And as I say, I grew up there as well, as much as I did on the Woodbury Down estate, by the way. How essentially, in a sentence, tell us how the area has changed over the last 10, 20 years or so.
In a sentence, the area has changed. Of course, it has changed. There has been...
In which ways?
Different groups coming from different countries, different immigrants, mixing within the community.
Is it improved for the better?
To make it more diverse.
Is it improved for the better or the worse?
Well, of course, it depends on what level you're asking me that question.
I'm asking you on your level.
On my level.
You're somebody who saw it before and after.
Well, I saw it before and I live in it. Do you understand? I've lived where I'm living now, in a council masonette, for 45 years. And to be told that I'm being displaced because of some new, fresh ideas of the Victorian age, by the way. Yes, I'm not going to be asking to be served, gravy on bread. I want this thing to be sorted out. I want people to understand this is a displacement of the people who are being targeted, like myself. No pensioners, nobody in job seekers, nobody in any sort of benefits will be living. I'm now told, where I live in Northumberland Park, that there'll be a 22-story brand new hotel being built up the road. I won't call any names, but you understand what I'm saying. When I am told, let me just finish this.
Go on.
I'm being told that where I live, there's nothing at all wrong with those places. They need a bit of refurbishment. That's all. Nobody's asking us. We are the tenants. We are the community.
Okay.
I want you to know, and for David Cameron and all the others to know, you need to consult us before you make decisions like that.
Okay. Thanks very much. We'll come back and talk some more about this in a moment or two. I do want your thoughts as well, if you're listening to this as well. Give us your experiences and what you feel that the Prime Minister should or shouldn't do about so-called sink estates. 0207 224 2000. We'll reconvene with our guest in a moment or two, but meanwhile, give me your thoughts, please, on what you've heard so far. 0207 224 2000. First, let's get the latest BBC Radio London travel, but now news with Barry Caffrey.
BBC Radio London.
You're listening to Dotun on Sunday between now and 10 o'clock when Duncan Barks gets into the hot seat. But between now and then, let's talk about the sink estates, if you like, of the capital. The Prime Minister says he's going to do something about them, spending money to regenerate them, develop them, arguably to pull them down and start again. Is that the right thing? If there is a link between some of these estates and crime, is the Prime Minister going down the right, correct route to, if you like, disrupt those communities and to rebuild their environments? Is that a positive thing or a negative thing? Tell me your experience, please. 0207 224 2000. Let me remind you of my guest. We've got Dr. Noah Nasser with us. She's the author of a book, Bridging Cultures, and it's a guide to social innovation in cosmopolitan cities and deals with the subject we're talking about. Lyndon Walters is a relationship coach. He's also the author of a book. Was it called The Champagne Urge?
No, The Taste of Champagne Urge.
The Taste of Champagne Urge. But that deals, even though it's a fiction, it does deal very largely on life in estates as well. Kemi Badenoch is with us. I do apologise, Kemi. I'm not. My Scottish ain't what it used to be. Let's leave that.
It's fine.
Yeah,
a lot of people say it like that, but it's Badenoch.
Kemi Badenoch is with us. She's a Conservative member of the London Assembly. We've got Jeanette Arnold with us as well, Labour member of the London Assembly for North East London. We've got Jerry Flynn with us, member of local community group Elephant Amenity Network in South London, which runs 35% campaign for affordable housing. He's also an ex-resident of the Haygate estate, which, I mean, you could see from the main thoroughfare between Elephant and Castle and Camberwell or Old Kent Road as well. You could see it. It was a landmark, but it's not there anymore, as you would probably have noticed. Jeff Bell's with us as well as the chair of the Woodbury Down Community Organisation. I just want to ask one final thing to you, Jeanette. We heard Lyndon just before we went to the news and travel talking passionately about the way that the likes of himself and other residents aren't being consulted by the Prime Minister. But why should they be? I mean, government has to take this kind of policy and decide these communities or these estates aren't working. Let's start again.
Well, they can't do that without the people, and certainly, I would certainly agree with the gentleman. The residents have to be at the heart of the discussion. You just heard Jeff, and hi Jeff, say that, Woodbury Down now is a great example that people can look to. And at the heart of that, and I've been following that and been, active in this, was that all the consultations were around the residents. So at local and at city level, and then national gave their money, it was the community who was at the heart of saying how these designs would be, what would be the best, the aspect that would be maintained.
So what are you going to say to the Prime Minister?
They will return to their estate.
What are you going to say to the Prime Minister then? When you hear Lyndon Walters say, I have not been consulted, and yet I'm being told that my estate is going to transform and I may not be able to afford to live there again. What should you be saying to the Prime Minister or the Mayor of London or whoever is responsible for those kind of draconian decisions being made? What are you going to say to them in support of the likes of Lyndon Walters?
Well, I should say to them that they have no business saying that they are not going to talk with or communicate with the residents of the estates. And in fact,
they haven't said that. They haven't said that, though. But they haven't said that. Jeanette, they haven't said that they're not going to talk to the residents of the estates. But they're not talking to them. I'm saying, what should you be saying on behalf of the likes of Lyndon Walters?
Well, what I would be saying is I would be making it quite clear in submissions to the advisory group that is going to be led by Lord Heseltine. When you develop these criteria for this fund, make sure that conversations and consultation and buy-in by the residents of these estates is the starting point of any bids that you receive.
Jeanette, thank you. Really appreciate you talking to us. Jeanette Arnold's there, who is a Labour member of the London Assembly, telling us in no uncertain words what she'll be saying to Lord Heseltine, who's in charge of transforming these sink estates. Kemi Badenoch, Conservative member of the London Assembly, she's right, isn't it? That's exactly what you should also be saying to Lord Heseltine.
Well, I mean, I think the interesting thing is that Jeanette's actually not disagreeing with the idea of regeneration. This idea is not just a Conservative policy. I think it actually originated from Lord Adonis, who is a Labour, or at least a former Labour minister. It's something that people agree on across the spectrum. And of course they're going to consult. Of course the government can make decisions on which ones, but the how and the when and so on all involves councils, a lot of which are, Labour run and Labour held. So these are things that they'll be doing with the wider community. I think that the problem is that no matter what happens, somebody's going to be unhappy. And it's just something we have to deal with.
Yeah, Dr. Nasser, she's got a point there, isn't it? No matter what happens, go on.
No matter what you do, if they build... the problem at the moment that we're trying to solve is that there's not enough housing, especially in London, and also that the housing that does exist in council estates, the density is not enough. They haven't been built that well. People say we should leave the council houses alone.
Density's not enough?
No. There's a lot of wasted space on them. So you can actually get...
Wasted space?
So the tower blocks don't use... they're walkways, they're places, paths and so on that no one uses, open spaces, it's not grass. There's a lot of stuff that they can do differently, and that's behind a lot of these regeneration schemes.
Is that your conclusion from consulting with the local police?
Yes. So certainly,
so it's the local police that have brought this.
Police have said that. I mean, this is one of the things. The most horrible things I ever witnessed was when I was driving down Summer Leighton Road, and there was a group of about 5 boys dragging a girl by her hair underneath one of these walkway paths. I couldn't actually see where she was ending up, and I was so horrified by it. Stopped, called the police. They couldn't find them. There are just so many nooks and crannies, and one of the things they want to do is design out crime, get more CCTV, make it more open.
Dr. Nasser, I'll get a response from you on that in just a moment. I just want to bring one of our listeners into the conversation. 0207 224 2000, if you'd like to join in. We're talking about sink estates and how the Prime Minister should approach redeveloping them, as he says he wants to do. Trevor in Wembley is with us, though. Trevor, good evening.
Yeah, good evening, Don.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea that he's talking about regenerating estates. I don't agree with him calling them sink estates because, although, some estates have got problems, like with drug dealing and so on, but they're not all like that, And as I was saying to your producer, that, it's one thing to knock down old estates, but you can't change the attitudes of the people living in those estates. That's down to them. Do you understand?
Yeah, I understand. So would you be in favour of, I don't know, sending those people whose attitudes you can't change, dispatching them, deporting them to Hull, somewhere like that, so that we can have the estates in London? Everyone's laughing in the studio. No, literally, if they're the problem, if the people are the problem, the residents are the problem, why not just get rid of them so the rest of us can live happily ever after?
No, that's like the easy way, plus, it's not going to work, because even if they send them to Hull, they're going to start dealing there. And then they're going to want to send them somewhere else. And it becomes like a cycle. And it's just a waste of time and money.
It was just a thought.
No, I understand, but that's not the way to deal with it. It's down to the individual to change, to decide that they're going to, be straight and get up and work for a living rather than dealing drugs and stealing or whatever it is they're doing.
If you don't like my easy way, Go on, you tell me your hard way then. We'll see if I like that.
Well, as I said, it's down to the individuals. They have to change. No amount of laws and whatever is going to make someone decide they're going to go straight. It's down to them. You know.
That's hard, Trevor. Sorry,
it's not hard.
Well, I disagree with you because there are usually only ever a few troublemakers that make it bad for everybody else. So by saying that, you're making it seem as if the entire estate is full of criminals and there are no good people. Usually, the people who are doing the bad, a lot of them don't even live there, but they go there because they know they can hide there. And changing the look of it makes a big difference.
No, I don't agree with you at all. I don't agree with you at all. It's down to the individual to make a decision to change, to go straight. Yeah, and as I said, no amount of laws and stuff like it's gonna, you know, make them stop. Because look how long the drug laws have been in whatever, and people still deal drugs and do whatever. So it doesn't work. You know.
Yeah, I share your unenthusiasm for the term sink estate, Trevor.
This is Jerry Flynn, by the way.
Yeah, hi, Jerry.
Hi,
Elephant
Trevor.
Immunity Network.
I'm glad I got the opportunity to say this. This term, it's not a good term. Everybody seems to think that people living on council estates are living on sink estates, and Haygate had a reputation for that. But I'd just like to assure people, my family lived on the Haygate for 30 years. It wasn't a bad place to live, but it got that reputation. And one of the reasons it got that reputation was because it was earmarked for regeneration. That reputation really picked up from about 2007, by which time the estate was empty. So I share that concern about the whole way this debate's being framed around sink estate. It's not good.
Dr. Nasser, you wanted to come in as well?
Yeah, Trevor, I totally agree with you. You know, it is only a few who can be given an opportunity, I think, to mend their ways. And I agree completely with Jerry. You know, the idea of the sink estate is almost a rehashing of slum, you know, the slum.
It's a shortcut, and it works, doesn't it? Because you get the idea that, okay, some of these buildings were built on sand rather than on, you know, solid ground, and they're sinking.
Yeah, but it's all a perception. It's all perception. It's all image making, and it's all a disguise, really.
But it's just semantics, though, isn't it? I mean, we don't need to hang ourselves on that word. Maybe it was a wrong word that the Prime Minister used, and thanks for the call, by the way, Trevor. Maybe it was a wrong word that the Prime Minister used, but let's look at the substance of this debate. Dr. Nasser, you heard Camille Badenoch there say that the police are being consulted right across this. Does that worry you, or are you comforted by that?
I think, you know, having the redesign of an estate could make a big difference in the perception of crime in the area. And I think what I'm arguing for is that these estates are built or rebuilt in such a way to integrate those tower blocks within what we call urban blocks with homes on streets. And that will increase density, and it'll also provide an opportunity for a much more mixed community to come in and balance out the social and the economic and cultural
and just to
diversity.
be clear as to where you're coming from, because the conversation has been about how much the local community should be consulted, and we'll come on to the Woodbury Down estate in a moment, Jeff. Just to be clear as to where you're coming from, which is the a priori consultation when you're regenerating problem estates? Is the first point of call the police? Because this debate is about crime as well, isn't it? Certainly from a government perspective. Or is it the local community? Where's the a priori consultation to take place?
Dotun, it's undoubtedly the community itself.
Is it?
Absolutely.
Is it really?
Of course it is.
Is it?
Yeah.
When we're talking about crime?
No, I think crime it's almost like, you know, an outcome of the social situation, and that's what needs to first be considered, and people's ideas and thoughts about where they live, because these are communities that are well established. They have very strong networks, very strong ties, and those things can't be rebuilt in a hurry.
That's a really good point. And Jeff Bell, you've been passionate about the way the success story of the Woodbury Down estate. As a member of the Woodbury Down Community Organisation, you will know, won't you, that however much the local authorities want to consult with the community there, ultimately, if the police say this is a crime estate, the problem here is crime, then they are going to have their say over and above what the community says, aren't they?
Well, what has happened on our estate is that the organisation of which I am a chair have won the right to veto all the designs in the estate, i.e. where the flats go, where the new apartments go, the design of them, where the new tower blocks go, who is going to live there. Now, we have struggled for the last, it's just not me, obviously, I've only been able to chair the last 3 or 4 years. We have struggled for the last 15 years to win these rights. So we have got veto rights over every significant development on Woodbury Down.
Why is that important?
Because we are the people who are going to live there. So who else do you talk to first? You have to talk to the people first.
But you're the people who live there.
It is not a question. This whole question. It is not a question whether regeneration is a good thing or a bad thing. It's a question of who is the regeneration for, who runs it, who controls it, and who benefits from it. Right, and those are the major questions. And I just want to, and I don't want to make a big sort of issue of this, but this is what David Cameron wrote in the Sunday Times, right? If you don't mind me reading this.
Go ahead.
He says, tenants' concerns about whether regeneration would be done fairly has prevented progress. Now, that is a contemptuous attitude to ordinary people. Right?
Is it not the truth, though? Is it
that is what he wrote in the Sunday Times last Sunday?
But it is not contemptuous. It is true. There are many times when we have not been able to regenerate something because the existing tenants who live there have blocked.
Yeah, but they're the ones that live there, as Jeff is saying.
But there are other people on council housing waiting lists who have nowhere to go, and we can't build extra housing because there's a dispute about what is there.
Because of that, you're going to make life hell for those people who live there?
No, not at all. But there are multiple stakeholders. This is social housing we're talking about. It's about the community. The police, yes, they're not. They don't override the people who live there. But it's community police that we have in this country. It's community policing. They police by what's going on, and what other people have said. There are many people who don't say anything. They're often silent majorities. And I appreciate what Jeff is saying. But the fact is that we have a huge problem of housing supply in London, and something needs to be done. The fastest way for government to get involved is land that it already owns. And if people spend all the time arguing about, no, you can't do it on council land because it'll upset council tenants. If you build something outside London, it's social cleansing. There's no winning because people will always complain. And we just have to get on and build stuff.
Yeah, Jerry Flynn. Does Kemi have a point there, Jerry Flynn?
No, I don't think she does, really. First of all, this business about density. We had about 3,000 people on the Haygate estate with 1,200 units, as they called them. Now, the new estate's going to have 2,000. The Elephant Park's going to have 2,700. It's going to house 4,000 people. So there's not really that great a number, proportionately, of an increase. Also,
but there is an increase in the numbers, though, isn't there, on the estate? So she had a point earlier.
They're over doubling the size of the estate, and they're only getting a quarter more people onto it.
Yeah.
So I'm really sceptical about this idea as well. Also, the displacement and disruption of the communities by regenerations, it's inherent in these regenerations. You displace and you disrupt communities. Now, that's got to be a condition of crime, social bad behaviour, if you like. This whole idea that by rebuilding council estates you're going to solve the problem of crime and antisocial behaviour is just simplistic. There's a lot more behind antisocial behaviour and crime than the design of council estates. And to move to expect to demolish a council estate and to solve that problem is just plain wrong.
But Lyndon Walters, look at that example that I gave earlier about the Broadwater Farm estate. After the riots, the local police were the main consultants about what should happen next, because they're the ones who had to police the area. And they said, no, this is all wrong. The design's all wrong. As Kemi was saying earlier, people can escape from one place to another. The walkways here and there. They've changed not just the estate, the entire neighbourhood. So what was... for example, two-way traffic is now one-way traffic. And basically, if you try and get around that one-way traffic, you end up going around in circles. You're trapped. That's the example of Broadwater Farm Estate. And yet, it transformed the community for the better. Lyndon?
Look, I believe that...
Is that a yes or a no?
What I'm answering in my way, thank you, Dotun, as always. I believe what needs to be understood here. There are so many... They're just like the walkways they're talking about. They're too complicated. We need to simplify exactly what is the goal. And the goal is very simple. May I just read from this part of my research?
And I'm going to ask everybody else what the goal is as well in a moment.
Give me a chance, Dotun. I had very few moments to express myself. Every resident, this is from The Independent, by the way, every resident, even residents who has bought their homes under right to buy, were evicted by Southwark Council, and this is an example they're giving, and offered but a measly fraction of the market value of their properties, let alone enough to buy a comparable home in local area. Now, the last bit, community and place are then reappropriated and repackaged as marketable commodities utilized by Ad Access to sell the luxury apartments which spring from the rubble of former social housing like shiny tombstones. Now, that's my point. My point is the council going to say, local government going to say to me, through David Cameron's, look, Lyndon, we are going to rehouse you for the term that we are going to use this funding to do the reorganization. That's fine. But you'll be able to come back. No, I won't be back. Just like many of my colleagues in the community who now live in Blackpool, all of this is displacement. Don't talk rot about this representation of anything else but a classist system brought back in. We've seen this in Lambeth back in the 80s. We've seen it.
I'm sorry.
You understand what I'm saying?
I'm sorry, I have to disagree with
I
that
don't
completely.
care who wants to agree or disagree with me. I'm living it. Unless
this
you're living it, please do not speak to me about what my experience is. Thank you.
So, this is a classic attitude that someone who's trying to make things better will have to face. That my personal experience is so strong, I don't want any dialogue, I don't want to listen to what anybody else has to say, I am right and you are wrong. That's not how we're going to get things forward. We started this discussion with Jeanette saying that estates were abandoned, nobody did anything, and then they fell into decay, and that's why they're where they are. Now we're trying to fix it, and they say, oh no, you can't do that. Something has to give. Something has to give. You cannot, on the one hand, complain that nobody cares, and then when they try to do something, say, oh, well, we don't want you to do anything. We want things to stay exactly as they are. Change always causes problems. I'll give you a perfect example. I bought a house 2 years ago. It is now on the site of Crossrail. It's now on the site of Crossrail 2. I will lose out no matter what. But at the end of the day, the greater good is what is important. And that's what I think we should be talking about. Is this for the greater good?
So you're a utilitarian?
To a certain extent, I think if there have been examples of regeneration where people didn't get what they were promised, then these things should be subject to judicial review. These are the things that we look at the London Assembly. If something wasn't done properly, if promises were broken, let's look at that. But to say a promise was broken before, so never again, we will not regenerate anything, anytime, anywhere, forever and ever,
the
is
danger
unreasonable.
of utilitarianism is that it can be the equivalent of the oppression of the minorities, can't it? So for the greater good, the minority has to suffer.
Well, if everything has, I understand what you're trying to say, but we have to work according to some principles.
In fact,
and I think those principles cannot be whoever has something now must never change.
Allow me
very
to
quickly,
respond.
though. Very quickly.
I am going to do everything quickly. Just let me just say this. I made a complete statement about my experience and where I'm living, my community. And it's gone to a different level now. The people only hear what they want to hear because the mentality of the classist, the mentality of the apartheid system, the mentality of selling out our estates. We didn't say we didn't want it. You never heard me say we don't want it upgraded. No. I never said that. But I'm saying that you cannot be selective. This is why they don't want to consult us. Because we have something to say. We have lived there. I've lived there for 45 years. I have a lot of say. I am a man of the community who the community actually asked for me to get, a nice...
Listen.
Can you believe that?
I can believe it. Lyndon, we're going to pick this up.
I just don't want to hear anything else apart from the fact that apart from the fact of being fair and listening to people's comment and talking on the comments that I've made. I've not made a comment that is opposite to regeneration.
Okay. Let's all get along, because that's one of the chapters actually in Dr. Nasser's book, What Makes People Get Along. And I think when we come back after the latest BBC Radio London news and now travel with Fiona McKinnon, we should pick up with Dr. Nasser's point. What makes people get along and hang out together and live in public spaces, etc. As I say, let's get the latest BBC Radio London travel now with Fiona McKinnon.
BBC Radio London, it's 9:05.
BBC Radio London at the weekend.
Dotun Adebayo on Sunday.
Call 020 722 42000.
Dotun Adebayo, Sundays from 8.
BBC Radio London.
Yeah, my number again is 02722 42000. If you'd like to join in the debate this evening, 02722 42000. We're talking about sink estates, quote unquote. That was the term that the Prime Minister used to describe the 100, what he would describe as the worst estates in Britain. 02722 42000. He says the solution is to regenerate them, maybe even scrap them altogether and start again. And he's putting money forward towards that. Is that the right way to tackle, for want of a better phrase, problem estates? Is that the right way? 02722 2000. Why are there problems in these estates? And the problems seem to be linked with crime as well. Is that the case? Give me your true experiences, please. Both living on estates that people might describe as failing estates or otherwise, or what you feel that the problem generally is. 02722 2000. Certainly want to talk to you about that. In the studio with me, we've got Lyndon Walters, who's an author, relationship coach, resident of the Northumberland estate in North London, but also very well known on the Broadwater Farm estate as well. We've got Jeff Bell with us, chair of Woodbury Down Community Organisation, which is just around the Manor House area of North London. Woodbury Down estate there is being regenerated, and apparently, according to Jeanette Arnold, Labour member of the London Assembly for North East London, who was with us earlier, apparently that's a success story in the way that that's being managed, that there's lots of consultation with the local communities. So is that what the Prime Minister needs to consider? And in case you think that this is all North London business, no, Jerry Flynn's there as well. He's a member of the local community group Elephant Amenity Network around the Elephant and Castle area. What was the Haygate estate was a place where he was a resident on for many years. He now runs a 35% campaign, which is a campaign for affordable housing. We've got Dr. Noah Nasser with us as well, author of Bridging Cultures, the Guide to Social Innovation in Cosmopolitan Cities, a crucial book for our conversation this evening. And Kemi Badenoch is a Conservative member of the London Assembly, and she's representing South East London for us, just to show that we're all balanced this evening. 02724 2000. Pick up the phone and give us a call.
Dotun Adebayo, Sundays from 8.
Call 020 722 42000.
BBC Radio London.
BBC Radio London.
Right, so let's go to our listener Beverly in Elephant and Castle. Beverly, good evening. I understand you're a first-time caller. Welcome to the programme.
Thank you.
Thank you. So what was it that compelled you to call this time?
Well, I'm saddened by the Cameron referring to estates which have crime on them, the sinking estates, because crime is a generic thing. It's not something that's generic to an estate itself. So pulling down an estate because of crime is not the way to go. And the new developers who are developing the new estates are actually segregating people by putting them into different classes, like the social class at the back of the estate, middle class the middle of the estate, and private buyers at the front of the estate. So they're segregating and going to cause crime in the future. And not only that, they're displacing the current community, which has been there for years, like the lady said on your programme. She's been in her community for 44 years. They should be consulted, the people within the community. It's not just about crime, is a reason to pull an estate down.
Joe Flynn is here from your local community, Beverly. He works with the community group Elephant Amenity Network, and he might be able to talk to you directly. Jerry, is Beverly right when she says that the developers seem to be dividing the haves from the have-nots?
Yes, who can deny it? When the cheapest price for a new property, one bed on the Elephant Park, which is what's replaced the Haygate Estate, is £350,000. The division is simple. Like you say, have and have-nots. And even the affordable housing, or the so-called affordable housing, is way beyond the means of most people who live around the Elephant and Castle, and way beyond the means of quite a lot of people in London, full stop. So the idea that somehow or another council estates were really all bad, and what we're going to get with these regenerations and mixed communities which are going to solve all of those problems it's just not correct. It's just not factually correct.
I disagree with you, Jerry, because I do think that the council estate is a form of segregation. At the end of the day, they were created to house a certain socio-economic group, and they tended to also be ethnically diverse. And therefore there was already, and many of them also have very clear boundaries. You know when you're approaching that estate. And it's got two sides to it. There's a positive side in that people can have a very strong sense of belonging, but at the same time they are separating themselves from the rest of the neighbourhood. And I think that is where, if there is going to be some intervention, is to blur the boundaries between people who may need supported accommodation and those who can afford private housing.
Beverly, is Dr. Noah Nasser there right when she says that, well, the neighbourhoods were segregated already, weren't they?
The neighbourhoods are not segregated within the South East London estates, the council estates. There are people that working class that live on the estate. There's probably even rich people that live on the estate who have £1 million in the bank, but fortunately they've got council housing. So, and to be honest with you, you don't know who the haves or the have-nots are on the estate until you come to regenerating the estate and displacing people. Then you'll see who's a leaseholder, who's a tenant. During the day-to-day, you don't know who's who. People just live on the estate as a community and work together.
But Dr. Nasser was referring to that those estates were segregated from everything else around them. So, you know, you'd walk down the road and you'd see people who own their own houses, they're the middle class, then suddenly there is this boundary, distinct boundary, that says you are now walking on an estate where people can't afford to live in semi-detached houses like the people outside the estate. In that respect, weren't they segregated from the rest of the wider community in any case, Beverly?
Maybe that was the designer's intention, to have little community groups. I don't know. I wasn't here when they were being built, but maybe that was. And it worked because people were a community within the estate.
Just a final point. Oh,
sorry. This
is Jeff Bell from Woodbury Down Community Organisation. Stay with us, Beverly.
I mean, there's a reason estates were built after the Second World War, right, and in the 1930s, and indeed in the 40s and 50s, is because the homes that people lived in previously, the working class people, had turned into slums, or in the case of the Second World War, there were bombs. These were working class areas that were bombed, and the reason, so the people which were homeless in the first place and they had to go to these new estates which were built after the Second World War were by definition almost working class because they were the homeless people. So you put homeless people in sort of homes where it is, and I mean I do not think there's anything wrong with that. I think you should build homes because for the reasons of social need. Social need should dictate what the homes are, where they're built and how they're built. The problem is that today too many homes are simply built to make a fast buck for the people who actually build them.
But Jeff, I think the problem was they were large estates. They were all concentrated, same socioeconomic challenges, and that kind of, increased the problem. That's where it was easy to label, it was easy to stereotype, it was easy to self-label. I'm from this hood, or I'm from this estate. It became, something that you could own. But if things were dispersed a lot more, you wouldn't get
I completely agree.
strong.
I think Dr. Nass is making some excellent points. I mean, one of the issues that because I've been a school governor and I'm also on the board of a housing association, so I also work with people who build housing. One of the problems that we have with young people who have low aspirations is that they don't see anyone around them who's doing well. Everyone, there's high rates of worklessness and thinking that is normal and not understanding that why and how the rest of society is different. So I do agree that there has been a lot of segregation within estates, and hopefully this is something that will deal with that. But let's remember, just going back to Beverly's point, we're not talking about regenerating all the council estates. They're talking about 100 of the worst ones across the country.
Yeah, well,
how can anyone disagree with that?
But hang on, what's good for the goose is good for the gander as well.
Yeah,
disagrees with it. Nobody does.
Could I get quickly into Kemi first before? Yeah. You're talking about children, kids not having any aspirations because they're not going to be seeing anybody around them that's doing better than them. Well, they're not going to see that on these new regenerations either. These new estates, they are really segregated. The affordable housing is in separate blocks. That is at the insistence of the developers. They have separate entrances. Some of them have separate lifts. This is by design. Now, we've been talking a lot about designing out crime in the new estates. We've spoken not at all about how division is being designed into these estates in this very way.
We're shifting from one form of segregation to another, and it's all just about the economics.
Well, can I say something? I mean, I've kept quiet because I don't agree with some of the things that's being said here. As far as I understood, council estates, as they're called, was for the people who could not afford to buy their own homes. Okay? And by the way, Doctor, I respect everything you've said so far, except for this bit about ethnically, focused. It was not. As a black person, I can tell you, it took the status of my job and my then director to vouch for me that I could afford to pay the rent. It was meant to be affordable. This is Maslow's basic needs.
Yeah.
Food, clothes and shelter. And that's what it was built for. I agree with our friend there. What's your name again? Jeff. I agree with him. What he said is absolutely what made them do it. As for the allegation that, we are segregated, I don't understand any of that. Where I live, people say, where do you live? I say, I live in that estate. Where do you live? I live in that house. We meet every day. If not in the supermarket, they stop me for a reason and so forth. So where is the segregation? The segregation is now. The segregation is now
happening
about...
again, Lyndon, but it's happening in a different way because the economics have shifted.
Yeah, but this is segregation, though, Doctor. This is what I see as segregation.
We're hearing one side. Let me
at least say goodbye to Beverly. I hope to come back to you, but I'm not going to get the opportunity, Beverly. So thank you very much for the call. Absolutely.
We're hearing one side of this. It is true that many people on estates feel a sense of community, but not everybody does. There are many people who want to leave. And when there's a regeneration, there are some people who can't get their ticket out of there fast enough. I mean, Jerry, you were talking about, leaseholders who now live in Kent and Essex. We've seen, general white flight from a lot of southeast London, places like Lewisham and so on. They weren't regenerated out of there. These were people who picked up their bags and left.
We
see it all the time. People are moving out of East London, from southeast London into Kent and so on. It is not nonsense. We can see it in these census.
But they have choice. I think what's happening now is the compulsory purchase orders.
But the point I'm making is that if you are going to knock something down and build it and rebuild it, there are some people who will not want to come back. There are some people who don't want anything to change. And what we need to do is that people make sure that people don't lose out. Doesn't mean that everybody will get what they want, but making sure that you haven't lost out. That's the important thing. It is absolutely right that that consultation needs to happen. That will happen. I'm on the board of Charlton Triangle Housing Association. That's what we do all the time, consult. But consultation doesn't mean doing exactly what the tenants want.
What do you mean? What do you mean by consultation? Because earlier on you didn't agree with consultation.
That's not true. I always agree with consultation.
Do you know what?
Consultation means nothing.
Right.
Consultation means nothing unless there is power there. I mean, people come to me and ask me questions, but unless that what I say actually gets put into practice, the consultation means nothing.
Absolutely.
But that's not a consultation. That's just you dictating what you want. Consultation is two-way.
Consultation with the people in the area who are affected by what is happening. And I'm not talking about consultation, I'm talking about empowerment.
Okay.
That is what we need.
Let me bring some more listeners on, because Gary in Tooting has been waiting patiently. I'll come to Levi in Camden in just a moment. Gary in Tooting, good evening.
Hello, Dotun. Great show as always.
Thank you very much, sir.
Oh my God. Really interesting diatribe you got there.
Oh, it's fascinating.
Well, London's always been a place where sort of squalor and splendour are adjacent to each other. On one side is a sort of austere sink estate, and across the other road there are these shiny Bellways, Lindens, Berkeley homes that, cost like £1,000 a week to rent. And I think what David Cameron should do is really address, affordable housing for, the working man like myself. Really, he just can't afford to get on the property ladder. Really,
it sounds so simple when you say it. Well, why isn't he doing it? If that's all he needs to do,
yeah, that's the address. And basically, in these working class areas, now the middle class have taken over and changed the whole infrastructure. And I know a place called Wandsworth Town. And it's semi-rough, but now it's turned into sort of wine bars and bistros for the middle class.
Exactly what you talked about. Yeah, do you know what happened there? That's a very interesting one. People may not remember. This was under the Conservative government of Margaret Thatcher's, that a housing estate there, which happens to be right by the river in Wandsworth. I think you know which one it is.
Yeah.
And it looks very much like... Yeah, you should look. It looks very much like the Woodbury Down estate, by the way, built around the same time.
Managers.
Yeah.
And bars are turning into wine bars. Prices you and I cannot afford. I mean, it's just the proletariat just being pushed out, really.
But let me tell you what happened on that estate. It's a fascinating story, if I may, Gary. What happened on that estate was that a huge housing estate. Looks very much like Woodbury Down estate. There's long passageways outside, the long balconies outside, pretty much built around the same time. Well, they cleared out. I think it was under Eric Pickles, by the way. He was the leader of the council in Wandsworth at the time. They cleared out all the people who couldn't afford to live there, or who were council tenants. Cleared them all out, and then they sold the block apartment by apartment to people who could afford it. It was yuppies. They were yuppies at the time, so I knew somebody who lived there as well. And suddenly all those balconies that you see with sort of concrete floors, suddenly their walls were painted with yellow gloss paints, and there were plant pots on every floor. Nothing wrong with that. There were security gates outside, so what was previously an open estate was suddenly a very enclosed estate. You had to go through sort of camera checks and everything like that. Ultimately, was that a good thing, though? I mean, they're improving the estate, Gary. I mean, it's a shame that the working class people couldn't afford to live there anymore. But if they could, you would have thought that's an improvement, wouldn't you?
Yeah, of course. It's all become like verdant and haute couture and everything, and it's very, very, very sad. It's all cheek by jowl, really. I've always said, squalor and splendour. I mean, if you go to somewhere like Paris, and if you live in a sink estate, you're not quite in the middle. They put you right out there in the suburbs.
Oh yeah, you're in the banlieue. That's the banlieue for you, mate. Forget the arrondissements. go out to the wilds, mate. The wilderness. Gary, really appreciate your call, by the way. Thank you very much. Dr. Nasser.
Yeah, Gary was talking about the squalor and splendour. There's an excellent...
Squalor and splendour, that sounds like a poem or a song.
Doesn't it?
To Esme with Love and Squalor, I'm thinking of John J.D. Salinger.
It doesn't have to be really understood in these terms, because if you look at, say, the Garden City, a place like Bourneville in Birmingham, it was an excellent example where you had a really strong economic base, the factory, and within the community you had, within streets of each other, senior managers, middle managers, workers living in cottages, And in the beautiful...
You might want to explain how those kind of estates came about through a company, because there were...
Yeah.
This is a Victorian ideal, isn't it?
It was a Victorian ideal, and it worked wonderfully in Bourneville. And
how did it happen? If you could just give us a background to that, if you don't mind.
Well, it was really a response to the Victorian slums. And at that time...
just like the Peabody Estates and so on, the people would have seen here in London, and the Guinness
Ebenezer
Estates.
Howard in particular brought forward the Garden City ideal, which was bringing the country and the city together. And so they created these garden suburbs like Hampstead in London, and they created Letchworth and Bourneville in Birmingham.
Garden City,
and there were a lot of other examples as well. But the key point was that it was very much a social-based model, in that there was equality and the sharing of a neighbourhood with all of these various social groups, and they tended to meet within the public spaces of that neighbourhood. So they met in the parks, on the high street, they met in the local schools.
But he was essentially doing this for the benefit of the workers. He'd made a lot of money on chocolate, hadn't he? It's a very similar thing to Henry Ford, who believed that, if the workers are happy and content in their environment, then there'd be greater productivity, etc. So there was that relationship. But that's gone, Jeff. That's gone.
True.
I mean,
It's true.
You don't have that kind of relationship between...
That's why sort of houses were built in the first place by the mines and so on and so on. It was a way of trying to keep the workers happy.
Or by the docks.
They were philanthropists.
Yeah. But that's gone. That relationship has gone.
Yeah.
And I just wonder whether...
But the thing is, the
intervention now is the government, isn't it? The government it has replaced the Bournevilles and the Guinness Trust and the Peabody Estate. They're saying, hang on, we'll decide now. It's not the company.
I don't think it's the government, it's the developer.
Yeah.
At the end of the day,
there's sort of two different things that we need to look at. There's some government-led projects, and there's some private sector-led projects. The bottom line is, what is the problem we are trying to solve? And that is that there is not enough housing in London, and it's because of that.
That's the problem. It's not crime. Crime is not the bottom line.
That is the key problem.
Yeah.
And
build more houses. Then
you need to build more houses. The reason why estates regeneration is part of this is that there is a lot more housing, better quality, and increased quantity that we can have with this regeneration.
Yeah, but then it wouldn't be about... It wouldn't be about sink estates, then, would it? It wouldn't be about sink estates.
The thing about the sink estates is that they tend to also correlate with all these social economic deprivation.
So it is about that. Then it is about that. So don't deny that. Don't say it's not about crime. It is about the social...
I haven't said it's not about crime. It's the main problem is solving housing supply. Crime is another issue which very helpfully is also partly solved, not completely. No one is saying that once you redesign council estates, crime will disappear. But it's not just that. It's health. You find, pockets of tuberculosis and other things. It's education. Loads of indices.
The Prime Minister didn't mention tuberculosis.
But he talked about deprivation. Deprivation is not just crime. It's also poverty and all the things that come along with it.
One of the reasons there's become a housing shortage is for the last 15, 20 years, councils have not been allowed to build homes. Right? That is the reason.
That's another issue.
That is the reason. And I mean, the whole thing, if you say we will leave it to the market, well, quite frankly, they have left it to the market for the last 20, 30 years, and it's been a disaster. Right, okay. A disaster.
Let me bring in Levi in Camden as well into the conversation. Levi, good evening.
Yeah, sorry, I'm on someone else myself.
Yeah, Levi, good evening.
Good evening. Yeah, my point is the government, this conservative government, who are basically a government for the rich. That's the background of the Conservatives. They just want London to be like basically a city of multimillionaires and billionaires. Their little rich Arab friends, the Canary Wharf, the City Mile bankers class. They just want everybody to be like Knightsbridge and Hampstead, all earning £10 million a year. In reality, that's never going to happen, right? So, but they think, let's knock down all the low-income areas. Let's build the property and make sure the property is one-bedroom flats cost, I don't know, 800 grand or something. That's in 5-10 years, London will just be a city just fit for multimillionaires and billionaires, the rich, super rich.
Levi, I do need to say something. I've sat really patiently and I've watched and listened to everybody. I need to say something.
You've got 2 hours to say something. Why are you suddenly jumping up now?
I've been checking how many times opportunities I've had, and I want to make a point that Levi, I want to agree with Levi. I want to tell Levi this is what he's saying is exactly what I'm saying. This new idea It's not new. It's been there for a long time, and now that the government has the opportunity to do it because they've won another election, this is why they're doing it. What I'm talking about is that people like me know what's happening in my area. I've seen the what it should look like, the futuristic look. I won't be able to pay rent in that area, and I won't be able to buy a house because it's going to start from 1 million. Do you understand? I'm talking about secure tenancy. I've got grandchildren. I've got my family. I don't want to be moved to North Yorkshire or somewhere. And so, therefore, Levi's right. This is exactly what's happening.
I completely disagree with Levi. I'm a Conservative London Assembly member. I'm not a millionaire or a billionaire. I've been living in affordable housing for the last 8.5 years. And I can assure you...
Yeah, but that's you.
Yeah, that's me.
You.
Yeah, that's me.
That's
but I'm not... Just because one person in a party is rich doesn't mean that it's a party for the rich. Fact is, if the only people they cater for are rich people, we will lose every single election from now forevermore. We've got to look after everybody if the Conservative Party is going to stay in power. But let's go back to the point.
I think we need to go to the affordable dimension, because
but let me make my point, because Jeff was talking about there not being a lot of building over the last 30 years. He's right, but the truth is that's supply. There's also demand. There are more people in London now than ever before. They're going to be 10 million by 2030. We can't go back in time to rebuild. We can build now, and that's what we need to do.
Levi, thanks a lot for that call. Appreciate it. 02722422000. If you want to join in this conversation, you've got another 25 minutes or so to do it. Pick up the phone and give me a call now. 02722422000. We'll come back to Nigel in Temple Fortune in a moment or two, and we'll carry on this conversation. But first, let's get the latest BBC Radio London travel and now news with Barry Caffrey.
London's headlines. The Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn has raised the prospect of keeping the Trident missile system, but without nuclear warheads. The party is conducting a review of its defence strategy. The American authorities in Iraq are trying to find a group of Americans who are missing in the capital, Baghdad. The news channel Al Arabiya says 3 US citizens are said to have been kidnapped. A US official said they were working with the Iraqi authorities to locate them. 1,000 jobs are expected to be cut in the steel industry in South Wales. 750 will go at Port Talbot, the rest at Llanwern. Both plants are run by Tata Steel. Arsenal have gone back to the top of the Premier League after a goalless draw at Stoke. It's enough to put them level with Leicester on 44 points, but ahead on goal difference. London's weather forecast: an increasingly cloudy night ahead, although perhaps still cold enough for a touch of frost in places. Occasional drizzle is possible later in the night, especially across West London, and lows overnight of 0 Celsius, that's 33 in Fahrenheit. Now with BBC Radio London travel news, here's Fiona McKinnon.
Thanks very much, Barry. BBC Radio London travel. Here's the latest. The A3 Kennington Park Road is closed northbound between the A23 Kennington Post Office and Ravensden Street after an accident. This means that bus routes 133, the 155 and the 415 are some of the routes on diversion, so do expect delays in the area. Woodford and on the A406 on the North Circular southbound at the M11 Junction 4. The inside lane is closed because of a police incident, and it's very slow on my camera on the approach. This has just come in. Tolworth, the A240 Yule Road is closed in both directions at the junction with Douglas Road because of a building fire. And in town, because of the Lumia London Light Festival, there are road closures including Piccadilly, Oxford Street and Regent Street, and around 25 bus routes are diverting or terminating early. With the Tube, there's still no service on the Piccadilly line between Cockfosters and Hammersmith, between Acton Town and Uxbridge, Hatton Cross and Heathrow Terminal 4, and between Heathrow Terminals 1, 2 and 3 and 5. So the only section that is running is between Hammersmith and Heathrow Terminals 1, 2 and 3, and that's running with severe delays because of staff shortages following train drivers' concerns over the safety of the train doors. There's also engineering work affecting the Tube with part suspensions on the Jubilee and Metropolitan lines. No London Overground service between Sydenham and Crystal Palace. Looking ahead, a reminder that there's 3 24-hour Tube strikes planned, with the first walkout being on the 26th of January and then the 15th and 17th of February. And currently at Gatwick, they've been de-icing the planes, and there are some restrictions because of the icy, snowy conditions, which may result in delays to some flights. Fiona McKinnon, BBC Radio London. The next update is just before 10.
BBC Radio London.
Can you tell us why you chose sexy beasts as part of your title? What's sexy about this crime?
The Vanessa Feltz Breakfast Show.
It's tongue-in-cheek, Vanessa.
Weekdays from 7.
Tell us what remains to be solved in this case.
Number 1, who and where is Basil?
Vanessa Feltz, putting Londoners first.
What is your take on the rising tidal wave of childhood obesity right here in London?
Gotta have moderation, because if you don't, what are you doing?
Well, as a parent, you're saying no.
The Vanessa Feltz Breakfast Show.
And whose fault is it, Rob?
It's the parents' fault.
Weekdays from 7.
Good morning. I really like the time of your new show, by the way.
Oh, that's nice. Oh, thanks for telling me.
BBC Radio London.
This has been a fascinating conversation, and it ain't over yet. We're talking about a response to the Prime Minister's comments that he's going to do something about sink estates, and he's declared, I mean, I'm not using that term, those are his terms, or that's his term, sink estates. You may not like it. That's what he describes estates, 100 of them that are so bad that they're failing. Something needs to be done about them. And he says, we need to regenerate them, spend a little bit of money, maybe pull them down and start again, and rehouse those residents who are there. Splits up communities to a certain extent. That's a necessary evil, is it? Give me your thoughts. 0207 Pick up the phone and give me a call. In the studio with me, we've got Jerry Flynn, who lived on the Haygate estate in Elephant and Castle. Many of you would have seen it. It was that estate with the balconies with all those lights going on for ages and ages and ages and ages. Such a distinct landmark. You knew that you were in South London when you came to that roundabout at Elephant and Castle and saw that long line of estates there. Anyway, it's no longer. It's been regenerated to an extent, and he says, well, not everybody's been catered for within that regeneration. Indeed, it seems as if a lot of the regeneration has been directed to those who can afford it. A one-bedroom flat on the estate now costs £350,000. Who can afford that? 35% Campaign is his organisation. It's a campaign for affordable housing. He's also a member of the Elephant Amenity Network, which is a local community group. Jeff Bell is the chair of the Woodbury Down Community Organisation. Apparently they've had a successful consultation in the regeneration of that estate by Manor House. Dr. Noah Nasser has written a book called it's called Bridging Cultures. It's the guide to social innovation in cosmopolitan cities. Also deals with a lot of the topics that we're talking about today. I haven't even asked you yet how we all live together, but I'm coming up to that. I promise you we'll do that in the next few minutes. It's one of the chapters in her book is called What Makes People Get Along. So I'm presuming it's neighbourhoods, community and otherwise, but she can speak for herself in a moment or two. Linda Waters here as well is the author of, I always get the name wrong, it's a huge book, and it took
Champagne Urge.
The Taste of Champagne Urge. It's got about 1,000 pages. It took me the best part of my life to completely read it, believe me. It's got about 500,000 words. That's not a book, that's a huge rock dropped upon you. Anyway, that's his book, and it does deal with it from a fictional perspective, life on estates and so on. He's also a relationship coach based in Northumberland Estate in North London, up by Wood Green and Tottenham, and also the Broadwater Farm Estate's done a lot of work there, particularly working with young kids, teach them football and other things, and teach them how to be men or women, as the case may be.
Discipline.
That sounds ominous. So my headmaster used to teach us discipline with 6 of the best. Kemi Badenoch's here with us as well, Conservative member of the London Assembly. She's holding out though. She hasn't buckled despite a lot of the pressure upon her. It's like those estates. Hers is not a sinking estate. She's built on solid rock, you see, and not on sinking sand. Nigel in Temple Fortune is with us. Good evening, and we'll come to Robert in Willesden Green. Just bear with us a moment, Robert, and Donald in Croydon in just a moment or two. But first, Nigel, go ahead.
Good evening. Well, I'm a newspaper photographer. I've photographed all around most estates in London over my 30 glittering years, you want to call it, glittering careers. I know the Broadwater Farm Estate very well, because my first ever girlfriend, when I was 17, lived in Clonmel Road, which is just around the corner from, so I know the area particularly well.
I know that road very well, actually.
Yeah, well, there you are. So I think that I think all these estates on this should be knocked down and razed to the ground. I'll give you an example why that is.
You what? Sorry, you think they should all be knocked down and razed to the ground?
Yeah, and rebuilt. I'll give you two examples. When Damalela Taylor was brutally murdered some years ago, that whole estate was brought down and rebuilt into a much nicer domain for people to live and work, live and work and reside in. Those horrible, awful concrete walkways and dingy, narrow, awful places, it was brought down. It's much, much better. I covered another terrible murder back in Willesden years ago in Craven Park, where a young boy, I think it was 12 years old, was murdered. And that estate was pulled down and rebuilt to low-level housing, much better for the community. But if these estates are so fantastic to live in, why is it most of the residents have big iron gates on their front doors? Because they have
not most of the residents. Come on, that's an exaggeration. It's not most of the... One or two residents do have big iron gates in front. And on some estates, it's to stop the police coming in. So they put huge... to be fair, it is.
Hang on a second. I think clearly that... a lot of estates, unfortunately, are blighted by gangs and blighted by crime. And there's lots of decent, law-abiding people who want to live there, go to work and come home and have a place of refuge. But unfortunately, their lives are blighted by a minority. And that is a problem. And I'm sorry to say that, but it's true. And as I said before, after Damilola Taylor was brutally murdered down in Peckham, that whole estate was brought down to the ground and was rebuilt.
Look, you don't have to be sorry to say anything. For one thing, all the guests here, I think, have agreed that these estates, wonderful estates sometimes, are destroyed by one or two people. You're absolutely right. But what do we do then? How do we move on? And Nigel, thanks a lot for the call. Let's hear from Robert in Willesden Green. And you've lived on council estates, Robert. Do you wear that as a badge of honour?
Yeah, sure. Why not? I don't suppose I didn't find fault with it. I lived on one of, at the time, what would have been one of the most notorious estates, the Maysfield estate, and that's Maysfield North, not Maysfield South.
And where is that? Where is that?
Maysfield North.
In Brixton, Stockwell.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
You know, it's in Brixton and Stockwell. Kemi Badenoch was just
but it's
explaining.
towards the tail end of Brixton, so it's getting closer towards the Oval. Is where this estate is.
I know exactly which estate you mean. Yeah. Okay, I know exactly which estate you mean. Yeah.
And this has recently been what the whole period that I was living there was going through the regeneration process. And fortunately for me, I was able to. Unfortunately and unfortunately, I was able to buy the council flat there. And then subsequently, I had to move out because it got quite bad the way the construction was going on, and there was no regards for the people who remained in the flats. So I found that quite disturbing. I had to move out. But the estate is better. It does look a lot better. It's been arranged better. And I don't really have an issue with the redevelopment of these estates. I think my main concern is how many of the houses are going to remain social housing. So if we had 10,000, for argument's sake, social housing at the time, when it's rebuilt, do we still have 10,000 social housing, or is that number being cut down?
Hi, Robert. I'm Jerry. I'm from the Elephant and Castle. How many you ask a good question. How many of these new homes are going to remain social rented homes in these regenerations? Well, we have some idea, because in the last 10 years there's been about 50 estate regenerations in London. They've raised the total number of homes on those estates from 30,000 to 60,000, and along the way they've lost 8,000 social rented homes. Now, on 50 estates, this is a pattern. So what I would say is regenerations mean loss of social rented homes. There's no two ways about it. And that is why this proposal from David Cameron to regenerate 100 estates across the country really fills me with a lot of trepidation. And anybody who is on one of these 100 estates should be worried. Something else I must say as well, it isn't just David Cameron's proposal to regenerate 100 estates across the country, which we should be worried about. There is a truly dreadful housing and planning bill going through Parliament at the moment, which is going to end secure tenancies for council tenants, put up rents for council tenants if they have a household income over £40,000, which ain't much in London, and is going to sell off so-called high-value properties. And of course, given where these estates are, there's going to be quite a few of them as well. So we got a pincer movement here. We're really under attack.
Pincer movement. Thanks for broadening out the remit of the conversation. But sorry, you wanted to say a final point on this, Robert?
Yeah, I just wanted to know. I just wanted to ask a question, because the housing bill that's going through, I mean, that is part of the issue as well. And as voters of this country, or as residents in this country, or concerned citizens, what can we do if we don't agree with the bill? Is there any scope for the general people to have a say, or does it just go through and there's nothing we can do about it? Is my question and my final point.
Yeah, we can do plenty about it. It's Jerry again. We can fight it, and there are lots of organisations. Our organisation is fighting it. There is Defend Council Housing. It's leading a campaign called Kill the Bill. Simple as that. It is demonstrating. Lots of demonstrations come up, but if you Google Defend Council Housing, you'll get the details about them. There have been lobbies of Parliament, and there's going to be a demonstration later in the year.
Over.
One going from Lambeth on the 30th of January.
Thanks very much for the call, Robert. Appreciate it. Sorry?
Robert, is it? Is he gone now?
Yeah. No, it's Robert. Go ahead.
Okay, Robert, listen, now I hear you and I hear exactly what you say. There's nobody around this table that doesn't agree that, regeneration is a must for certain parts of the London. Nobody's saying no. But what we are actually saying, in fact, what I'm saying, is that the damage to mixed communities is rife in this sort of setting. What I'm saying is, who live in a council accommodation for 45 years need to be assured that I can come back and live in my community. I want to know it's affordable. And I want to know that I'm going to meet a lot of people who already live there and choose to live there. I hear a good friend, a Conservative, probably with a small c. And,
no, it's with a big C.
With a big C. Okay, I've forgotten the name already. I'm so sorry.
Kevin. Yes,
Listen,
and then big and small c.
I hear what you say too. And I understand your defense of your stance and your belief. But you must please listen to the likes of some of the callers that's calling in and some of us here who are all here for the same reason.
I'm sure she is, actually, to be fair to her. But
well, she can answer first.
Of course she can. Donald in Croydon is with us as well. Donald, good evening.
Look, a couple of things. The first thing, I just wanted to say you made a mistake. It wasn't Eric Pickles, it was Edward Lister.
Oh, I apologise. Who developed the housing in Wandsworth? Okay, I do apologise.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the Conservative Wandsworth Council is now Boris Johnson's deputy mayor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So already a pattern emerges. There's a connection. I want to. Do you know the story about Arnold Circus in Shoreditch? Do you know the story of Arnold?
Well, I know Arnold Circus in Shoreditch, but I don't know the story. Go ahead.
The very first council estate built in this country. It's a cautionary tale, but the fact is, it was the very first one built, and when they looked at, did research, not one single person that originally lived in that slum was housed in the estate that was built. An estate that is still standing and is beautiful. It's a great idea of regeneration, but it set the standard for how future regenerations and gentrification has gone. Most people do not get rehoused in the area that has been regenerated. They are dislocated or relocated to other places. And this has gone on Aylesbury, in East London, in West London, in Hendon. It has ever been thus. And I wouldn't go as far as saying it's a conspiracy, but what I am saying is I remember living in Wandsworth and watching council block after council block of Labour voters being moved out, a privatised building going to very rich people overlooking Battersea Park, and hundreds of Conservative voters moving in. That ward turned to Conservative. That borough turned Conservative. That constituency became Conservative. So it's not, this gentrification is also a political process. And when the Conservative people, including your lady there who comes up with so many reasons of why it must be done or it should be done in a certain way, I agree things need to be done, but just like the gentleman, I can't remember his name, from the Housing Association, the housing group, it needs the consultation and the active involvement of local people in what happens, when it happens, and to who it happens. And we're not consultation is a two-way process, and it never has been, which is why they generally fail.
Donald, thanks. Really appreciate that. It was Jerry Flynn, I think you were talking about, or Jeff Bell, who are both in the studio with me. Dan in Surrey, let's take a final call from you. Good evening.
Good evening, Dotun. Thank you very much. Just a quick one. I was speaking to your receptionist lady a little while ago. Sorry, I don't have her name. It's probably sounding very...
She's my boss. She's not my receptionist lady. I am her receptionist. She's my boss.
She's doing a great job. So are you. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Just a quick one. I've got mates who work for architects, big firms up in the city, and for a lot of what they say, basically what they're saying is that these developers can come in and they can pay a premium not to have any social housing, and that is what 90% of them are doing. and they're saying that sort of a lot of these properties get bought by wealthy overseas landlords, and they remain vacant 90% of the year. I mean, how can that go on? I mean, there's so much empty space that isn't being used for housing, which should be used for housing, there's houses and whatever. And it's like San Francisco. I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with the homelessness problem over there, but I mean, there's so much housing over there that isn't being used. They could accommodate every homeless person in the city.
Appreciate the call. Thanks. Some really good points as well, Dan. I didn't know that about the developers, but it makes sense now that you say it.
It's not true anymore. It's not true anymore. This is when people say
it was true. It was true.
It
up
was
until
true,
when was it true?
Up until the government has announced, levies on foreign-owned property.
Sure. It may take effect, but there's always ways to get around that.
But the reason why,
there's always ways to get around that, isn't there? There's always ways to get around that.
Yes, there are always ways to get around. There's no rule that someone will find a way around. But if you talk about the caller just before who says that they cleanse certain areas and then no one comes back in, one of the things that councils will do is that if an area has suddenly become very expensive, rather than give a property that can now be £1 million and give it to social housing, they'll take that money, build 10 elsewhere, and then let a private person buy it. That's why that happens. I think that makes sense. The thing we're trying to do is to house as many people as possible.
Okay,
that is the primary reason.
We've only got 10 minutes left, so I want solutions from everybody, if I may. I'm going to turn to you first of all, Dr. Nasser. As I said, I wanted you to explain chapter 3 in your book is called What Makes People Get Along, in terms of community and living together on top of each other sometimes on estates. We do. We literally live on top. I live in a 25-storey housing estate, ex-council housing. I only pay £87.50 a week, by the way, which is a premium, fantastic, I think. £87.50 a week. I live on the 5th floor, 25 stories, people living on top of me. I have to sort of watch my P's and Q's when we have to share a narrow elevator together, and somebody says to me, yeah, it's a nice block, as long as you keep to yourself. Just keep to yourself. So I do. Is that how we get along?
No, definitely not. So to get along, I mean, what makes us not get along is these social inequalities, that we have stereotypes and prejudices against certain members of our community. And that's why the displacement issue of moving people out of these neighbourhoods is one of the biggest factors, because they have built very strong social connections. There are kids who've grown up together, they've played together on the streets, mums have hung out in schools together and cafes. There are church communities and mosque communities and all sorts of faith communities. But so what?
Things move, things change, don't they? Things change.
But actually these connections are what really create a sense of belonging, a sense of place. So we don't want to necessarily destroy those kinds of relationships. In fact, what we want to do is encourage them to bridge between different socioeconomic and cultural groups. And that is why one of the things that I'm really interested in with this council estate regeneration is bringing in mixed communities. And if people have to move out of the regeneration area, they would move within 400 to 800 metres, which is what we consider to be a walkable neighbourhood. And therefore, you are creating a new ecology, if you like, of communities that can meet, again, a bit like the Bourneville model. And in a recent report by Savills, they're saying that actually if we redesign some of these estates, we can increase the number of homes between 190,000 to 500,000 new homes. That could not just house those who've been displaced, but they could also house these new communities as well, and therefore build opportunities for trust and for mutual cooperation and for empowering each other, because social mixing has very strong benefits for improving the life chances of those people who are maybe lower down the socioeconomic hierarchy.
And it is that social mixing, Jeff Bell, that is so tangible when you come to the Woodbury Down Estate. For anybody who hasn't been there, I mean, even I've been outside the school there. There's a school behind it. When you go on Green Lanes and you turn the first right, there's a school at the end of that road, isn't there, as well, which is connected to the Woodbury Down Estate. And I see the sense of community there, with parents waiting outside for their kids and everybody knowing each other and talking to each other. Dr. Nasser has a point. However, let's be real now. you know yourself, and you've accepted that the estate needs to redevelop. It will come at a cost. You can't keep things exactly the way that they were. A certain percentage of community breakup will happen as a result, won't it? Is it a price worth paying for? Is it a price worth paying for?
No, the point is, clearly, I now live in a new home. I've been moved from an old flat into a new home. It's a nicer home, it's a better home, and so on and so on. But I still pay roughly the same rent as I paid in the old home. I've got a secure tenancy for the rest of my life, which the government is trying to take away, right? So, in a sense, as far as I'm concerned, that's a success story. And of course, when you say things can't stay as they are, in terms of people who have lived on our estate staying there, all of them having houses, we've proved that can happen. That can happen, and I mean that is one of the lessons I want to finish with. If ordinary people organise, get together, work hard, campaign, they can roll back lots of these attacks on their homes, on their houses. And I mean that's what we can do. And that means that the ordinary people who live here have the ownership of actually the regeneration schemes, and that is what is important.
Linda Walters, that's your solution.
I've said it.
Educate, agitate, organise.
I've said it. Look, there is a very simple process to go through in any decision making. Okay? But what you have to understand is who is driving this initiative. That's the real problem. The solutions are easy. They're very, very easy. No one I know in my community is actually objecting to upgrading. Everybody wants being upgraded. You upgrade your phone, But what they're saying is it is senseless to take us to a completely different environment from which we are total strangers.
Are they organised?
You as Dr. Noah just actually confirmed what I said earlier.
Are they organised where you are? Your residents?
Well,
your local.
Listen.
They're not organised.
Listen. So, I can tell you about a meeting I went to this Thursday.
No, you can't, because we're running out of time.
I can indeed. No,
we're running out of time.
And this is about the defence of exactly what we're talking about here. But they're organised. But when I asked them, are you toothless? Or have you got strong jaws and teeth? They said we are just a lobby.
Jerry Flynn, it does seem easy, and Linda touched on that. It seems that the solution's easy. Build affordable housing. Very briefly, why is that not happening?
It doesn't suit developers, it doesn't suit this government. I entirely disagree with Kemi's approach to this. These regenerations aren't for the benefit of the people living on the estates, and are not going to provide more homes that people can afford. It's no good building loads of homes that people can't afford. It's not happening because developers are sitting on planning approvals because they like to feed the market. They like to feed the market as they wish, so that they're not got too many homes on the market and they can bring prices higher. It's not happening because the political parties, and I agree with Kemi on this point, all three political parties support this regeneration bandwagon. The political parties haven't got the backbone to stand up to developers, certainly at the local level. There are some very simple...
That's embarrassing, Kemi. Kemi, that's simply embarrassing, isn't it? And there's one thing that I haven't told listeners, is that you were a policy advisor to David Cameron directly, so you have the man's ear.
Development.
It doesn't matter.
I was talking to him about Nigeria.
Yeah,
but the truth is...
When Jerry says...
So Jerry says we don't build houses.
He says that the developers have got greater power over political parties. They don't know how to stand up. We vote for you, and the developers got greater party, greater power.
The truth is, the people who have the power are always the voters. If we do things for developers and not for ordinary people, you can vote us out. That is the bottom. That is the bottom line. There are 60 million people in this country. How many developers are there? Jerry says, let me finish. Jerry says that this government doesn't build houses. This government, the coalition, built more houses 2010 to 2014 than Labour built in its previous 13 years. We are building more than the Labour government did. So that is not fair. Jerry is also also talking about,
Kemi.
but housing costs are not created by the government. They're not. If the government sells a house for £100,000 and that house really costs £400,000 on the market, the truth is the government is paying £300,000.
Those homes
You
can't
cannot,
they're not accommodating the majority of Londoners.
You cannot and that is because there are more Londoners now than ever before. The developers cannot just hold on to land banks. We can take it away from them. There are penalties for doing so. The fact is, planning applications are also very, very difficult to get through for all sorts of reasons. And a lot of these councils are Labour councils. That's a fact. If David Cameron isn't coming to
I'm going to have to bring this conversation to an end. I'm actually going to have to bring this conversation to an end.
All right, I'm stopping.
Unfortunately. Hopefully I can tempt you all back again when we know a little bit more about the government's plans, and then we can do it part two. Dr. Noah Nasser, author of Bridging Cultures, The Guide to Social Innovation in Cosmopolitan Cities. Thanks very much. That book's available on Amazon and elsewhere. Jeff Bell, Chair of Woodbury Down Community Organisation, many thanks to you and good luck in developing that area. As I said, that is literally my alma mater there, more or less. Linda Walters, author and relationship coach as well. Many thanks for coming in. Kemi Badenoch, Conservative member of the London Assembly, and Jerry Flynn. Sounds like you're doing fantastic work on behalf of the local communities in Elephant and Castle. Elephant Amenity Network. And he runs the 35% campaign as well for affordable housing. Many thanks. And next up is Duncan Barks. But first now, let's get the latest BBC Radio London news and our travel with Fiona McKinnon.
Thanks very much, Dotun. BBC Radio London Travel. Here's the latest. First with the Tube. There's still no service on the Piccadilly line between Cockfosters and Hammersmith, between Acton Town and Uxbridge, Hatton Cross and Heathrow Terminal 4, and between Heathrow Terminals 1, 2, 3 and 5.